Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas and welcome to the 8th video in a series of game development tutorials on how to make your own 3D platform game in Unity 6. In this tutorial we'll be covering a scoring system. Remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload. Feel free to leave a comment and drop a like. I also have a Patreon page where you could help be a part of this channel, and you'll also find all the scripts and the assets to this series there too, along with plenty of other things. You can also now join as a free member. Now on with the tutorial. So in games like this, we have some kind of system that, i.e. when we collect a gem, we see a score on our screen. And we're going to do that in this tutorial, and we're going to make sure we use the UI correctly. And in order to do that, we need to have a canvas. So if we go to Game Object, go to UI and click on Text, Text Mesh Pro, you'll end up with a canvas, text, and event system. You may need to import the TMP essentials. You may get a little box that says import. Just click on that and give it a couple of seconds to import, and when it's done you can just close that down and you'll be left with these here. So what we'll do is we will change this text here. Let's call it current score. Now that's all good and well for now, but if we double click on our canvas, you can see that if we pan around and make sure we view it from the right angle, that we now have the words new text in the middle of our screen. If we go to game view, we can see that as well. And we can use this to our advantage. What we need to do is change the canvas to be scaled correctly to any screen size. And in order to do that, we need to make sure we are clicked on the canvas. We go to the inspector panel, down here to canvas scaler, and change it to scale with screen size. And now we need to set a resolution. So you could set this as the resolution it currently is if you wanted to. You could set it as 1080, 4K. I'll go 1920 by 1080. And then we just need to match the width and the height perfectly in the middle. So we say 0.5. And what that will do on the game view is it will make that look smaller, but it means that it will scale with any screen size that this game will play on. So let me explain briefly why we have to have a canvas here. So any UI elements, such as text, such as images, things like that, have to appear inside the canvas. The canvas is overlaid on top of our game at all times unless we turn it off. So in the case of this right here, we want this to be our score. We can go over here to the inspector panel and we can change some things about this text. Let's double click to zoom in a little bit. And let's have this say score with a colon, and we'll say 0 for now. What I want to do is I want to use the rect tool, this here, and we'll pull out these blue dots just to expand it a little bit. But this looks a little bit small. If we go to game view, it's very, very small. Let's change this. So let's go back here to the main settings. We could change the font if we wanted to. We don't have any fonts installed in our project yet, so we'll leave that for now. Let's have it as a bolded one. Let's have it as, let's say, font size 56. How does that look? That looks a little bit better. We'll stick with that for now. You could underline it if you want to, and you could also change the colour if you wanted to. It's entirely up to you. I might have this as very slightly grey. There we go. And there's other things that you can play around with. You can go with a gradient if you wanted to, and all different kinds of settings, change the alignment. It really is entirely up to you what you do. I would take a couple of moments now just to kind of go through there and see what you think is the best thing and how you want your score box to look. So I'm now going to drag this over to the top left. And now what I need to do, because it is in the top left, we need to set the anchor position. And that's this square here. We need to set it as top left. What this means is that it will always be this distance away from the top left corner. If we were to have it in the center and the screen size would change, it wouldn't appear in the correct place at all times. However, it does now. Let's add a little bit more to this. Let's go to our canvas, let's right click, and let's go to UI and let's have in a raw image. And you may be thinking, well, why have we got a raw image? Well, we can use this to our advantage just to give it a bit more of a different look. Let's use the rect tool again and change the size of this to about there. And let's drag it over into the corner. And you'll see as we do that, it will snap into the same position as the score. Let's decrease the size, maybe to round about there. And now let's change the color to black. However, let's change the alpha to 100. If we look, we can see that the score does look a bit faded behind the actual picture that we've got there of just the black box. That's because of the ordering in the canvas. Whatever is furthest down in the canvas means that that is displayed foremost. So for example, if we drag raw image above current score, you'll notice that this changes. Score becomes much more prominent. That's because the score is now rendering on top of this black grey see-through box. So let's change that a little bit more. Let's make it a bit bigger. And let's bring the score maybe to about there. How does that look? Cool. I'm going to go with that for now. So we've got some basic UI elements in place, but what we really need to do is make sure that we update this whenever we collect a gem. So in order to do that, we need to modify the script that we created for the gems with a couple of different things. We also need to make sure that we get things in the correct place. So let's double click on our red gem. Let's have a look at this. Let's scroll down in our inspector panel, and here where we've got gem control script and it has script and it looks grayed out, double click it. And what this will do is it will bring us directly to the script. So how do we make this work as intended now? Well, what we need to do is we need to first create a variable that is the score amount. And if you recall, we created a blue gem. I want the blue gem to be worth 200 and I want the red ones to be worth 100. Red gems are most common, so what we'll do is we'll say serialize field, and we will have an integer, and we'll have this as gem score. By default, we'll make it equal to 100. So at this point, what we need to do is whenever we collect this gem, we need to be able to add this 100 to whatever score we currently have. And that's where we need to create a master script for scoring. So now as we have this in place, our gem score, let's save that for now. Let's head back into Unity. Give it a moment just to compile. And we're going to create a brand new script which is going to store the scoring information. It's still thinking about it. That's all right. Shouldn't take too long. We only made one line change. What's taking so long, Unity? Okay, there we go. Last little bit now. So once that's done, let's right click, create a new script, and we'll call this score control. Open that script up in Visual Studio. And we're going to create a couple of variables in here, and those variables are going to reference the actual score that we're on, as well as the actual box that we have the score displayed on. So let's say at this point we're going to do something a little bit different. Well, not this point, but the next point after. We're going to start with serialize field, and we'll have game object, because this is going to be the scoring box. And we'll say this as score box, semicolon. Next, what we're going to do is we're not going to use serialize field. We want this to be a public and static. And what that means is that when something is static like this, it means that other scripts can actually interact with this variable. And because we want this variable to be the master control of our score, we need that other script, the gem control, to talk to this one to say add 100 to whatever variable this is. So we'll say public static int total score. By default, we'll make it 0. So what that means is that we can get rid of void start and the annotations. We don't need them. And in void update, we can say scorebox dot get component, because we want to get the text component inside that Text Mesh Pro text box. So in spiky brackets, TMPRO. So obviously TMP is Text Mesh Pro dot TMP underscore text. Close spiky bracket, open close bracket, dot text. And now we tell it what we want it to be equal to. So we'll say it's got to be equal to the word score with a colon and a space, quote to close that bit of text, and then plus total, if I change my caps, total score, semicolon, and save. So let me briefly explain what is going on here. We have created a script that is holding the total score. It will always know what the total score is as long as the game is running. And then what we're saying is that we want the score box, so that's going to be the score, the actual text box we put. We want to get the component of text and change it to say score plus the total score, which could be 0, 100, 200, 400. So next thing we need to do is we need to go to gem control, and on trigger enter, we then need to say that the script we've just written, so score control dot, and then total score right there. So we're saying total score plus equals gem score, semicolon, and save. So what's happening here is that whenever we collect this gem, we're doing what we did. We play the sound, destroy game objects. In fact, I think we'll put this, just to be safe, I think we'll make this the first thing we do. So put it above the gem collect play sound. So we're doing what we previously did, except we're saying add the score to this script, and then this script is saying, okay, we've got a new score, so let's add that and let's display it on the screen. So if we head back into Unity now, and we now need to attach this script, the score control, to our level controls object up here. Do you remember when we create that level controls? Well, that currently contains all the sounds for this particular level at the moment. However, we can also use it to attach scripts to control the level. So let's drag and drop score control onto level controls, and you'll see, although we have two variables in here, only one is being displayed. When something is static like it won't display here. You could make an internal version of that if you wanted to, but we don't need to for now. We know it's going to work. So what we do is score box. We attach the current score over here. And let's go to our red gem and just make sure that the variables here have appeared. So there we go. Gem score is 100. But what we'll do is before we play test this, let's zoom out, click on the blue gem, and make sure that the script, it does indeed say that, but let's put this as 200. Now the reason we did this as a variable is so we can change this particular number in any gem we want to. So if we go back to red gem, it still says 100. This red gem says 100, but this blue gem will always be 200. So now let's press play and see if this works as intended. We should be able to collect all three gems, so we should end up with a score of 500, I think. And we've got 3 red and 1 blue. So there we go. On the screen, there is 100, 200, 300, 500. Perfect. Whenever we stop the game though and resume it, the score will reset. So that means that if we go to a different scene in our game, which we will get to very, very soon, it does mean that the score will reset again. So having that script active only means that it's active whilst our game is running. So there we are. There is our basic scoring system in place. And we can modify this a little bit more as we want to, as we go along. But for all intents and purposes, it's working just grand right now. Next time, what we'll do is we're going to put in a finish line to this level. And we'll do some fading in and fading out. So I want to kind of fade into the game to start playing. And then when we get to the end, we fade out basically. And that's the end of the level. And we can move on to the next one. So remember to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload. I'll see you in the next one.